by storming Blackgate.
And that's why the film doesn't flow as well as it should have. As well as the fact that the studio cut out at least an hour of footage. I want to see the director's cut. Honestly, I want to see the director's cut of this film. Because a lot of stuff feels missing. Yes, this film was entertaining, but I want to see more. Stuff was obviously missing. And I feel as though that also probably broke the flow. Like, don't have a max runtime. Oh, you can only have 2 hours. Like, if you want a film to be 3 hours, make it 3 hours. People will support it. Like, not everybody wants, like, a 90-minute film. Yes, they're fine. But if a film has to be 3 hours, make it 3 hours. Marvel's been cooking up 3-hour movies almost. What do you think Infinity War Part 1's going to be? 3 hours. So it's like, it's really just kind of annoying. I want to see the director's cut. That should have been the theatrical cut.
Well, I got my wish. Zack Snyder's full vision is now currently on HBO Max, all 4 hours and 2 minutes of glorious screen time. Yes, if you watched my review for Justice League 2017, I was overly positive.
But for now, this film was just decent. I had a fun time, but it was just decent. I think it could have been better, but alas, it is what it is. I had a blast with Justice League, and I'll be giving it, honestly, a 3.5 out of 5-star rating. Yeah, I named a bunch of flaws, but I still had a good time.
And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I grew up watching the Justice League animated series, so I was just excited the fact that I was getting to see, the people that I really watched growing up, finally, obviously live action form. So I blame that, but at the same time, I also think that, I know it sounds like I'm making up excuses, but, my mindset of doing reviews is a little bit different now, because back then I would also watch the movie, and then as soon as I would watch it, I would go from the theater right into my car, and I would turn on the camera and I would review it. So there wouldn't be any time to marinate or anything, the way that I do it now, where a lot of times there are like a couple days or several hours, whatever the case may be, to where I marinate on it, and then I'm able to give you guys a review. Such is the case with this. So this dropped Thursday, obviously. Sunday is when I watched it, because I was waiting for a friend. And then, like, almost a week later, I decided to finally review this film, because I wanted to marinate it all. I wanted to not get overhyped or anything. I wanted to actually process my ideas before giving it to you guys. Now, I will say this right off the bat. There's going to be a lot of comparisons and contrasts between the two versions, between the 2017 cut and this version of the 2021 cut. The reason why I'm doing that is simply just because I feel like it's kind of necessary to kind of show like how butchered Zack Snyder's vision was originally. The other thing is, I wanted to also say is that I'm not going to really talk about spoilers, but I will say that I'm not going to give any plot synopsis or anything, because if you're watching this review, odds are you've seen the original cut, in which case you know the general idea. So, all that exposition aside, let's get into it, guys. So, starting off with the positives, right off the bat, I think the 4-hour runtime, it may be a bit too long, but it was nice to see a superhero film that was like very much so into breathing in terms of the pacing. It took its time with things. You really got to build the characters and the dynamics of such. I really liked that. I especially liked how certain characters that in the original cut we didn't really get to know, this cut we did. Cyborg in particular, I know a lot of people have touched on that, but Cyborg, I absolutely dug him in this cut. Did not care for him in the 2017 cut because I didn't really know him. But in this cut, Zack Snyder's cut, I thought it was great. I thought it was really amazing to see his arc, because he is the heart of the team. It's apparent from the first frame that you see him, because you just see a damaged individual, someone that doesn't really want to live. But he is almost facing like a redemption arc, because he himself has so much guilt, but he puts that guilt into the team, and then he obviously is able to enhance it and everything. I'm not going to spoil anything, but by the end, you're just kind of like, I felt good about him. For someone that I wasn't even excited to see to begin with in the 2017 cut, to see that he actually had a satisfying arc, it's great, because I personally wanted Green Lantern or Martian the Manhunter to be in it, not Cyborg. I was like, why Cyborg? Come on. But he was interesting. And Flash, I didn't like. I'll get into that in the negatives. I didn't like him, but there was one scene that I absolutely loved him in. And that happens towards the very end, which unfortunately was cut in the original cut. But I really, really dug it, because the thing is with Flash, I'll touch on a little bit. He tries to be funny throughout the movie, but there's one scene towards the end where he has to be very serious and give a dramatic performance. And in that instance, I thought he nailed it. I thought he did such a great job because it really showcased the stakes. And it did such a great job of building the suspense. And honestly, it was very much so overwhelming in terms of the score, the visuals, the performance, all of it combined to be a scene that honestly is one of the best of, honestly, maybe the DCEU. It was a great scene. I've listened to the track to where that music plays during that scene so many times. It's so great. But speaking of the score, I think Junkie XL, I always get their name mixed up. Junkie XL, I think their score for this is amazing. It is definitely reminiscent of their other score, Mad Max Fury Road, in many instances. But, I'm not a big fan of tempo music usually, but in this case, I am able to let it pass because I thought it fit very much so the scenes. I thought it worked really well. And there are a lot of scenes that are pretty original in terms of the score. As I already mentioned, the scene involving Flash, but also Cyborg's theme. Cyborg, yes, actually has a theme, and it's like a simple tapping. But it works so well. There's like tapping and then other instruments playing in the background as the score progresses. I thought that worked really well. The action scenes also are very propulsive in terms of the score mixing with the choreography. The thing is also with the action scenes is that they are very intense. They are extended, but they are very intense. Definitely earned its R rating. I think that one of the main things is that because the scenes are extended and are left to breathe, you really do feel for the characters with what they're going through. What's especially amazing about the action scenes is that as the scenes progress, the action scenes get better and better, I think. And surprisingly, the final action scene also was really effective, which I couldn't say the same for the 2017 cut. Another thing I wanted to mention, speaking of the action scenes, is that the very beginning of the movie, the action scene at, I believe it was Wonder Woman's world, I should say, that obviously the whole movie shot 4:3 aspect ratio. That scene at first I wasn't a big fan of, just simply because of the 4:3 aspect ratio. There was a lot of action that was close up in your face, so you couldn't really tell what was going on. And during that instance, I was like, he should have just shot on widescreen. But as the film progressed, in terms of the cinematography, the 4:3 aspect ratio I really grew to appreciate and love. I love 4:3 aspect ratio. I mean, The Lighthouse is one of my favorite movies of the decade of the 2010s. But I just love the 4:3 aspect ratio. But I feel like for an action movie, not so much. But this movie kind of provides that it all depends on the context. Because as the film progressed, I really grew to appreciate that. And, by the end, I was like, yeah, it was a good choice. I get why he went for it. I also like the color grading. I mean, it's Zack Snyder type color grading, obviously, so it's very dark and aggressive. And I like that. I like it when a film is obviously very aggressive in terms of its color grading, because I feel like the movies that don't really use color grading, it's like those are the movies that should be where it's trying to go for a naturalistic approach. But when you were trying to be stylistic, I think that that's important that you have that aggressive color grading. And I mean, Zack Snyder obviously had that approach with this. The visual effects also, it's obvious that there's a lot of CGI being utilized. I don't know how that will age, truth be told. But for now, I was able to look at most of the CGI and say that it's kind of noticeable, but at the same time, it was a lot better than the 2017 cut. And for the most part, it did work with what they were going for. I also like that there's a lot of, editing choice. Well, editing I'll get into at the very end. But there was a lot of editing scenes that I really appreciate, like cobbled together, that worked really well. And that was the thing. A lot of scenes are rearranged from the 2017 cut, and it makes for a more dynamic story, which again, the story is a lot more fascinating because I felt like with the 2017 cut, Superman coming back, it happened so fast that you're just kind of like, what the heck was the point of that? But then when you watch the 2021 cut and you see literally the first 5 minutes is Superman dying, and then 2.5 hours later he's finally brought back, you feel that. You feel that loss of Superman. You feel as though this team is missing something. So when he is brought back at the end, it is so overwhelming in terms of happiness and joy that you just can't help but say, yeah, I get why Snyder did it the way he did. I don't know if originally he would have had it as 4 hours, but still, the way it works here, you definitely feel that loss. And I think that that was effective. The other thing is, as I already mentioned, I mean, you get to know and care about Steppenwolf, which is something I never thought would happen. And he looks a lot different too, which also worked very effectively. Now, again, I'm very positive towards this movie, and I don't want to, dampen the mood, but I do want to talk about some negatives. So, the first thing is, in terms of editing, I think that Snyder's editing style mixed with his directing style, I think really kind of ruined the beginning a little bit. Not totally. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the beginning's terrible, but I thought that at the first act, he really overused the slow motion. As the film progressed, he got better with knowing when to use it. But at the beginning, there was just so many scenes where he was using slow motion, and it wasn't necessary in my viewpoint. There was that, as well as the fact that, as I've already mentioned, it took me a little bit to get used to the 4:3 aspect ratio. Some of the visual effects are a little bit glaring in terms of they just stand out to where it's like, that's not going to age well. But the other thing is Flash. Flash is a character that I get he's supposed to be humorous, but at the same time, I feel like that he should be humorous in a different film. This is a Zack Snyder film where the tone is very serious. So when all of a sudden everyone's serious and everything, and you have Flash being like, just cracking a joke, it's like, yeah, it's not really the time. It doesn't fit. And that was my big thing. Every time that Flash would open his mouth and try to have a joke, it just would not work. I did not laugh at any of his jokes. I think I chuckled maybe once. And every time I would just turn to my one friend, I'd just be like, really? Like, come on. Like, it just didn't work for me. I get that some people like that humor and everything, but I didn't like it. I like the fact that most of the movie is serious. So every time that happened, it just really halted the pacing and honestly, the tone for me. But again, overall, the pacing and tone are pretty good. But again, I do think that this should have been cut down a little bit. Also, the last 10, 15 minutes, I think that would have worked 4 years ago. But the fact that we're getting this cut now and probably won't receive, obviously a sequel to this, I think that it doesn't really work. And I'll get into that in a second. I think that what Snyder's going for, the Nightmare Vision sequence, like that timeline, I think that that's fascinating. I really do. But I think that during that sequence when it involved Joker, I thought that his dialogue was really wooden. I just didn't think it worked. I thought it was kind of cringy at times, especially compared to Batman's dialogue during that same scene. But I think that it shouldn't have really been in there because we're probably not going to receive a Justice League Part 2. If we do receive a Justice League Part 2, I'll eat my words and I'll say, okay, yeah, maybe it was kind of necessary. But as it stands, I think that they could have ended right before that. As well as there were a couple moments of fan service that, for me, at first glance, I liked. But then as the film progressed, I kind of was sitting on the fact that, it's probably not going to mean to anything. And it doesn't, unfortunately. Martian Manhunter, his cameo, I loved because I've really been looking forward to seeing him on screen ever since, again, I saw the animated show of Justice League back in the day. And then watched his scenes and I was like, well, this isn't even really important. It doesn't really enhance the plot. I wish he would have just joined in the fighting and everything, but he doesn't. And it's kind of like, whatever. It's just set up for, another movie that we probably won't get. But as it stands, again, I don't want to damper too much on the negatives because, again, I do appreciate this movie. I do think that it's more well-rounded. It's more dynamic. I could definitely see myself watching this again because I do like the chapter structure. I think that really enhances, honestly, the film. It feels like an epic, which I liked. But I like this movie. I don't think it's perfect by any means, as you heard with the negatives. Oh, one other negative I forgot to mention, and I do have to mention this before getting back to the wrap-up. Amy Adams. Still haven't figured out what to do with her character, Lois Lane. She's a great actress. Love Amy Adams. She's incredible. But we still haven't figured out what to do with her character, unfortunately, in the DCU. So I forgot to mention that. But again, overall, this is a solid movie. I very much so enjoyed it. It has a lot of great superhero moments. You definitely feel the pacing building up to something monumental. And when Superman gets arrives, it's great. But yeah, I'm going to give Zack Snyder's Justice League a 3.5 out of 5-star rating, which, for those who like a hot sauce rating, it's the good old Texas Pete hot sauce rating. So yeah, I like this movie. I definitely think that it's not amazing, but it does have amazing moments sprinkled in, and it is definitely an entertaining good time. But guys, restore the Snyderverse. Is that the hashtag? I'm down. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on this movie. And as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.